Bullet Train has just pulled into theaters, and it's got a lot going for it. Adapted from a Japanese novel, the movie features an all-star cast headlined by Brad Pitt, but the movie has received some backlash. In this video, we're gonna take a look at how the movie-going world felt about Bullet Train, as it was on its way to theaters, and whether the movie managed to surpass expectations. The film attracted a lot of criticism before it pulled into its final stop. Kōtarō Isaka's book had a lot of fans, both in Japan and in the English-speaking world. So when Bullet Train was first announced, there was a lot of hype behind it. The adaptation was first developed by Antoine Fuqua, who envisioned it as an R-rated homage to Die Hard. That sounds exciting. Unfortunately, the studio that bankrolled the actual production was none other than Sony Pictures. The stuff that followed should come as no surprise. Sony switched the direction of the movie from Die Hard to PG-13 action comedy, although they made up for that by handing the reins to David Leitch. This was the guy who worked with Chad Stahelski to make John Wick, so he was a great fit for this project. Fans didn't get long to be optimistic though, as the real controversy that plagued this movie started to emerge. In June of 2020, Sony started casting the movie and brought on the likes of Brad Pitt, Joey King, Brian Tyree Henry, and Aaron Taylor Johnson. Now, on paper, this is a really powerful cast. Brad Pitt is at a point in his career where he doesn't just do any old movie, and everyone else on the list has a really strong resume. Later casting announcements included Zazie Beetz, Michael Shannon, and Hiroyuki Sanada, further boosting the star power of the movie. Here's the thing though, the novel is Japanese and takes place in Japan, with mostly Japanese characters, and Sanada is the only one on this entire list who's the right ethnicity for this setting. Yep, Bullet Train is yet another adaptation of Japanese work that whitewashes its cast. It's happened a number of times in the past. You'd really think that Hollywood would learn its lesson by now, but nope, Sony has decided to completely change the races of the characters, and their loophole to avoid criticism is to only refer to them by their nicknames. The loophole didn't help them stand up to criticism all that much. David Inoue, executive director of the Japanese American Citizens League, denounced the whitewashing by saying that the least they could have done was change the setting. The cast would be less offensive if the movie didn't take place in Japan. But not only did Sony not change the setting, there are tons of references to Japanese pop culture. There are Japanese people in the movie, but they're extras. Interestingly, director David Leitch revealed that there were pre-production discussions about changing the setting from Japan to the US. They didn't go through with it though, because keeping the Japanese setting made the movie look and feel distinct. That sure sounds like the studio is treating a whole country and its people as a backdrop, but we'll let you guys be the judge of that. Inoue didn't just direct his remarks at Sony. After all, it was the decision of the actors to join the movie, so they're complicit in the whitewashing too. Joey King in particular has said in the past that white actors should not take Asian roles, but it looks like she's forgotten about that. Isaka, for his part, described his characters as being ethnically malleable, and the story of the book isn't married to Japan. Naturally, Sony was happy to hold up that statement as proof they'd done nothing wrong. The studio, along with screenwriter Zak Olkewicz, promised audiences that the movie would honor the Japanese soul of the story. Clearly, the movie was in hot water. The only thing in the whole world that could save it is if the movie were good enough to transcend the hate. How did that turn out? Depends on who you ask. The critics have made their voices heard by deeming this to be an average movie. It has settled at 54% on Rotten Tomatoes, with the consensus that the cast and action aren't quite good enough to make up for the weak story. The audience reaction has been pretty different. From over 100 verified ratings, the movie sports an 84% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Meanwhile, it has a 7.5 out of 10 from user ratings on IMDb. Say what you will about whitewashing, the cast isn't lacking in talent. Anyone who was expecting Brad Pitt to put on a mediocre or bad show clearly needs to touch grass, and putting one of the directors of John Wick in the director's chair may have been vital to saving this movie in the eyes of audiences. So it looks like Bullet Train might have proven enough of its worth to avoid being defined by the whitewashing controversy forever. But that's the thing about ethical issues in Hollywood. Does the cast wearing good make up for the fact that they're the wrong race? Probably not, but as long as the movies are good, the anti-whitewashing movement will struggle to get enough momentum to bring real change. Enough about the movie now. Let's talk about Brad Pitt's shirt. Celebs are getting really creative with their outfits lately and blurring the lines between masculine and feminine fashion. Brad Pitt took a big swing across those lines at the premiere of Bullet Train with his outfit. The brown skirt was paired with a matching brown jacket, a pink shirt, and a pair of combat boots. It was quite the look, but Brad really carried it off and cemented himself once again as one of the ultimate hunks of Hollywood. But enough about Brad Pitt's skirt, let's talk about the train. Japan's Shinkansen train line is an icon of Tokyo and has featured in tons of movies. In fact, it's an instantly recognizable feature of Japan's capital city and one of the coolest train lines in the world today. Early proposals for the railway line started in 1940, in the midst of a certain really big war that would devastate Japan's economy in a few years. Post-war, Japan really needed a rapid transit system to support its economic rebuilding. The Shinkansen line became operational in October of 1964, just in time for the Tokyo Olympics. It was fast enough that it made a serious change in how people worked and traveled in the country. One of the most famous stats about the Shinkansen is that it has never had a fatal accident in over 60 years of operation. This does include the time when a train was derailed in a 7.4 magnitude earthquake. The movie Bullet Train might provide some much-needed exposure to the line, as the pandemic is proving to be bad for the railway business. People are traveling less in general, and there are fewer tourists itching to check out these iconic trains. That shortfall in revenue is coming at a particularly bad time, as construction is on the way to add a line from Tokyo to Nagoya that uses the wonders of magnetic levitation. It's set to begin operation in 2027, but is unlikely to be finished by that date since it has a budget of $50 billion. When it is complete though, it'll be able to travel between Tokyo and Nagoya in just 40 minutes. So make sure to take a ride on the bullet train whenever you visit Japan. Then again, it's one of the country's biggest tourist attractions, so we don't think anyone needed our recommendation to give it a try. And before we go, let's revisit Hollywood's whitewashing problem one more time. For a lot of our viewers, the first time they may have heard of the whitewashing problem would have been in the past few years, when black actors and actresses were noticing that they never got nominated for Oscars. Or those who've been following movies a bit longer might remember when Scarlett Johansson caught major heat for playing a Japanese character in the live-action Ghost in the Shell movie. But this problem is a lot older than that. In fact, it traces back to the very origins of Hollywood and the film industry. Whitewashing started off as a necessary evil. In the 1930s, studios wanted to make movies that showed all corners of the world, but all the actors were white. However, even as diverse actors started to join the industry, many film execs insisted on casting white actors in non-white roles. The decades of whitewashing have convinced a lot of the older industry hands that non-white actors simply cannot draw audiences the way a white cast can. They still think this, even though this logic has been proven wrong again and again. While actors themselves are speaking out, and there are special interest groups furthering the cause of casting diversity, the real power is in the hands of the moviegoer. If you care about this issue, the solution is pretty simple. Stop paying for movies like Bullet Train. That's it for today's video. Have you watched Bullet Train? If you have, drop your review in the comment section below. And while you're at it, let us know what you think of whitewashing in Hollywood, and specifically in Bullet Train. But before you board your train, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.